This is from 2 Corinthians, and also from Paul, who was an apostle of Jesus Christ. This treasure we possess is in earthen vessels, to make it clear that its surprising and surpassing power comes from God and not from us. We are afflicted in every way possible, but we are not crushed. We are full of doubts, but we never despair. We are persecuted, but never abandoned. We are struck down, but never destroyed. Continually, we carry about in our bodies the death of Jesus, so that in our bodies, the life of Jesus may also be revealed. While we live, we are constantly being delivered to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our bodies. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you.
Robert Prevost held his head in his hands. That's a little of what we know that happened in the conclave this week, that Robert Prevost held his head in his hands. I've been trying to imagine that scene, what one might be thinking as it became more and more clear, a reality that he would soon be the next Pope, Leo XIV. I wonder, was the news as it was emerging even unto him, was it more heavy than he imagined? Was it more unbelievable that he, an earthen vessel like us, might be even being called? His brother, who lives on the south side of Chicago, said once he had asked his brother if he ever imagined to be Pope, and he said, "No way. It's not going to happen." And I asked again and again, it's not going to happen. But in the last few years, or even months or days, his answer changed. Not that, yes, I look forward to being Pope someday, but if it is God's will. I don't know about you, I too would be holding my head in my hands. Every time there is a major transition in life, I tend to hold my head in my hands, wondering, is this the right way to go? Sometimes I've even joked my leadership style, as I've tried once, was led by a magic 8-ball. I would shake it and hope for the right answer. But it seldom worked. We, like Pope Leo XIV, Robert Prevost, and all these other men and women in the world, are at times called to be leaders. Leaders who perhaps hold their heads in their hands, wondering, why me? There are surely better people than me. Yet, God entrusts each one of us, the earthen vessels that we are. Sometimes vessels that feel completely empty and barren and dried out, and sometimes overflowing with the beauty and the water of life. Yet the challenge of being human leaders, even when the divine is speaking through us, is not to be presumptuous that we already know that what everyone needs, and that we become so presumptuous that what we believe is best for me becomes best for everyone else. It's a bit about humility. It's a bit about wondering. It's a bit about stopping to imagine what's coming upon us. To imagine if this is just a really bad headache we're having, or that the Spirit of life is moving within us. We, thus far this morning, have celebrated the Spirit of life moving through the resurrection with each one of us. We have said welcome in many ways. We have said that God is in each one of us, that God is in each person in this world. And the call to be leaders is not something that we should avoid at all cost, but it is to hear what God is calling within you and me. What is God calling this community to be in the future? This church has had a marvelous history since 1962. For some, I describe Mountain Rise as still a very young church. Yes, I know some of us here feel like we've been around from the beginning, and yes, you have, which is odd for some churches. For some churches I have served became in existence in 1807 and 1812, even out on the Cape Cod. There's a church that was formed in 1619, which is a congregational church that later became part of the United Church of Christ in 1954. Yet the Spirit of God has been calling out to each one of us. The Spirit of God, I imagine, is not speaking exactly the same as it did in 1807 or 1812. There are realities for the church there and other places that would not imagine worship as we do it now. We never imagine images and words flashing upon the wall. For if it had, it might have even seemed like the hand of God was working, that an image would just appear out of nowhere. Yet, churches with time have changed their mind and reconsidered. One church I served within its history talks about in the mid-1800s expelling a certain family from the church. In other words, to be excommunicating. The reason was for the lack of prayer. We'll not try that today, because I imagine many churches would suddenly be more empty than they are now. But with generations that passed, they became more than just busybodies trying to determine if someone has prayed enough. And I wonder, I'd love to ask that church council at that time, well, how did you know Were you peeping in their bedrooms as they knelt to prayer at night? Were you watching at their dinner table at night? Or were they a little bit of troublemakers? Perhaps it was the Spirit of God moving and we didn't like it. But with time, as the history goes, in the late 1900s, it became an open and affirming congregation. Later, it deemed it needed a different type of church leadership, realizing they could not afford as much as they used to. They trusted God for them, a small congregation, to called one that had not taken the traditional path of seminary, but have taken a longer path through the New York School of Ministry in the United Church of Christ to learn the skills and to practice them and to feel that God could speak from someone who didn't head off to seminary at age 22. Oh, my friends, what we are called to be as leaders is not presumptuous. It's not about having our own way, but to listen. To listen to the voices of all God's creation. To listen to the church at work and ministry. And to come of common heart, not to limit the church, but to open the doors, to let the fresh air flow in. And sometimes, as much as that chilly wind may be, or hot as it may be, it may even disturb us. Yet we have to trust that the wind of the Spirit is filling us as earthen vessels. And with time, and we're not there yet, there will be a day of Pentecost when all that energy that God has filled us, that you and I mean all of you, will be filled. And the leadership will be called forth. And you are invited to hold your head in your hands and pray. My friends, 1 Corinthians begins with one phrase saying, love, and I add the words, in leadership. Love and leadership does not insist on its own way, and it's not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. Leadership welcomes every earthen vessel that's willing to be filled and to be called and raised up as leaders. Every gender, every race, every person God speaks to. So rise up, for God has called you as the prophets and leaders of today, and to welcome what leadership may come your way. Amen.